Hi, this is Carrie, and welcome to Tandem Talks, a podcast meant to empower you to live your life your way.
And I'm Craig. Join us as we go deeper with entrepreneurs and their journey creating success in business and life.
Welcome to another episode of Tandem Talks. We are just so thrilled to have Chelsea Haines here with us today. She is a certified gut health coach and life coach, and really leans in with women across the world to help them heal internally from the inside out so that they can really thrive in life. And I've had so many wonderful conversations with Chelsea. It was on her podcast, which is amazing. You should check it out. But I look forward to digging in deeper with her on her entrepreneurial journey. And we're just appreciative of you being here, Chelsea. So welcome.
Thanks, Craig and Carrie. I really appreciate being here. I'm excited.
Yeah. So we want to hear a little bit about your genesis, your journey into entrepreneurship. I know you were working in the yachting industry, which I want to hear a little bit about because that's not everybody's story, and just how you segued to business.
Definitely. Well, and I'm sure you guys can relate to this, right? I always sort of say we've evolved into where we are now and doing what we're doing now. And what I'm doing now as far as health coaching and working virtually was the next logical step to my personal journey. And that really started much longer ago than I ever really thought. I mean, in college, I ended up studying entrepreneurship as a minor. So I have a minor in business entrepreneurship. I've always known in my heart that I wanted to work for myself. Then, of course, I graduated college in 2008. So the economy had just totally crashed, and working for myself really became the only option. So I explored different network marketing companies and ways that I could try to be my own entrepreneur without a lot of funds to start something right from the beginning. And eventually I became a yoga teacher. And that was really great because it was sort of this beautiful marriage of I could represent myself as an entity and work for myself and make my own hours and work in a studio and get paid as well. So I had private clients, I had donation classes out in parks, and I also worked at studios. So that was a really great learning experience and something that I even carried over into launching my company now. And that was the transition into making the financial piece of it easy. And I would encourage anybody who's listening to this, who is that sort of struggling entrepreneur or, small business trying to find a side hustle, there's ways to get really creative about making money. So that way you can do what you love to do without feeling the pressure of having to pay the bills. And for me, that usually looked like a hybrid of working for myself and working for somebody else for a while. Eventually, teaching yoga led me to a really amazing journey, which, as you mentioned, Carrie, that was working on super yachts. So in 2015, I got divorced, which catapulted me into this really deep, beautiful opportunity to self-reflect on childhood wounds that I hadn't healed from my parents' divorce. And it really was a journey of allowing myself deep healing. And during that time, I was teaching yoga full time. And I happened to be working at a studio where a fellow teacher had just retired from the yachting industry. And this was one of those wild moments where I was just driving to the studio, and it was sort of like, I don't know, a God moment where the voice that came to me was just, you have to move on to a boat. And it was that specific and that profound and that almost shocking to my system, so much so that I pulled over on my way to the studio and I called my friend Amanda and I said, apparently I have to move on to a boat, and you're the only person I know who has ever lived on a boat before. What do I have to do to make it happen? And then 6 months later, I spent the next, not even 6 months, about 4 months that summer, I spent getting my classes covered, selling all my belongings, had to give away my cat. That was really tough. But, the process, again, I saw it as an opportunity to just shed what was no longer serving me. And it was multiple layers of physical and emotional clutter in my life that I was able just to slowly let go of. And I drove down to Florida in a rental car. I got my basic safety certification training, and I joined a super yacht, and I did that for 5 years, where I traveled the world and I taught yoga on board. And man, talk about another layer of self-reflection. I mean, imagine being in a college fraternity with a bunch of adults from around the world. Maybe English isn't their first language. Maybe we all deal with stress very differently. We're handed envelopes of cash at the end of these big trips, and all of a sudden we're somewhere in the world and we're really stressed out, really tired, overworked, and underslept. And it's like letting a bunch of kids out into the playground of the world.
A really great visual, actually.
Yeah,
Yes.
very specific.
Yeah, and that's exactly how it is. So that, as much as these boats were 150 to 350 feet that I worked on, they're really massive boats. It's still very small when you get, 30 crew members together in one place. And again, you're overworked and underslept. So it was a really cool opportunity to dive into another layer of how I see myself and how I react to other people in the world and how I handle stressful situations. And it became very clear that career for me wasn't a forever. And again, kind of circling it back to where you are in life. And if you're on that sort of struggle bus with this bigger vision, I had to do yachting for a little bit longer than I had wanted to originally, but it provided such a financial cushion for me to say, okay, if I can just set these certain financial goals and get to these certain points in my life where I can jump ship, get back to land and launch my business, and do it in a way where I'm not struggling and feeling graspy for clients, where I could really just drop into a place of service and coach and help people from my heart, knowing that I had that financial backing. I mean, that was huge for me. So in 2019, I jumped ship and I launched my business. It was sort of, that year was kind of like a soft launch. I was sort of doing a hybrid again of coaching and bringing on new clients and also doing day work. So that was kind of a cool thing in the industry that I was working in, that I was able to not work on the boats full time anymore, but I could do it like in contract shape and form. So, and this is not, okay, the yachting industry is very unique. However, the creativity is not unique, right? So in any circumstance or any situation anyone is in, there's really a lot of ways to get creative about how we can approach what we're doing. And as long as we're attached to our bigger why, it makes the nitty-gritty and the mundane and the monotony of the logistics of it not feel quite so heavy and burdensome. So it's been 3 years now, and I'm coaching full time, and I have a thriving business and a team of 4, and feeling really grateful for it.
Wow, that's amazing. Well, I have so many things I want to pop back to that you covered, but just congratulations on the journey. And it's definitely a colorful journey, which that's what life is all about in so many ways. So I really respect what you've been able to do. One thing that you talked about is this element of shedding and letting go of things that aren't serving you. And I just feel like that has never been more relevant than the pandemic. And I just see so many people in their life really reevaluating what is important to me. What have I been doing just totally without thought, mindlessly, attaching myself to? And I've just appreciated the pause that this last year has given me, and really figuring out, okay, now the world is slowly opening up a little bit. What do I want to actually take with me? So I appreciate you speaking to that, but any suggestions for people, especially like the newbie entrepreneur who there's a lot of noise, right? Because you likely are working a job or maybe multiple jobs. You referenced almost having a side hustle to fund the side hustle, which is a really valuable tip for people, getting creative and getting scrappy. But anything that you could speak to that's helped you intuitively figure out what to let go of and what to retain.
Yes. And I love this, Carrie, because everything that I do, like this conversation is literally the foundation of the bigger picture of what I do. I help people physically heal their gut so that they can then trust it again. And it's really one of the 5 pillars that I operate on in my coaching practice, is that our body can and does heal if given the chance. We just have to let go of that which is no longer serving us. So, it's number one, the reminder that we are whole, We are not broken. There's nothing else that we need to add into our vortex, into our to-do list. The key question is, who am I being while I'm doing all of these things? So to answer a little bit more specifically, is there anything that you're doing that is creating stress? And especially as an entrepreneur, it's so important to figure out your boundaries. Your time is literally precious and limitless, and limited, whereas money can feel just as precious, but money is limitless. Like, they just printed another $3 trillion bucks out. Like, there's so much money to circulate and to have and to give. And once we drop into that abundance and knowing that what's truly valuable is our very limited time on this planet. We're all given 24 hours, no matter where we are in the world or who we are. 24 hours is all we have. So really dropping into the value of your time. And, one of the big things that I saw, of course, in myself and then also in my people during the pandemic, like you said, was now all of a sudden we had this easy out to not have to do the things that we didn't want to do. Mm-hmm. Right? I no longer needed an excuse to not go to the wedding, or I didn't need an excuse to not go to happy hour. It was just a given. And it was so much freedom that was actually shocking and very traumatic. So I'm not downplaying the experience, but now that we have a little bit of hindsight, the freedom that was forced upon us, we've all been craving for and asking for years. Oh, if I just had more time. Now all of a sudden, it was thrown on us. So that in and of itself is a little bit of a different conversation, but healing that trauma is important. But something to take away from that is, when do I start bleeding my energy out and saying yes to things that I actually want to say no to? It's sort of like looking at the holes. My coach and I talk about this all the time. She's like, all right, Chelsea, what holes do we have to plug? And of course, for me, it's always a boat analogy. Like, if you're in a boat and you've got holes in the boat and you're just bleeding your energy out in all these little holes, eventually you're going to sink. So you have to plug the holes, and that requires self-reflection. It requires sometimes, or most of the time, saying no. And that can feel hard because then there's feelings of abandonment and letting people down and people pleasing that we have to look into. The greatest part about being an entrepreneur is that it's basically, it's the best self-development that you'll ever embark on. So if you're trying to experience some kind of self-development journey, then just go be an entrepreneur.
Go start a business.
Yeah, because
I think we pretty much put that exact quote in our book. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, you're going to be bumped up against every single challenge imaginable. And it's really all a reflection of what's happening inside. So, as far as the tip that you can walk away from this little tangent of intuitively, how can I start implementing these boundaries? I always come back to remembering that whatever leads to peace is the right answer. So if you're stuck at a fork of having to make decisions, or if you're feeling guilty about setting boundaries, whatever decision gives you the most peace, my cousin says, let peace be your umpire, right? We don't question an umpire. He either says strike or ball, and that's it. I mean, every once in a while, maybe it's questioned, but for the most part, we trust that umpire and the split-second decision that he has made on that toss. We're at peace with his decision. So let's start letting peace be our umpire. And whatever decision is going to lead you to the most peace in your heart, in your calendar, in your mind, it makes it a lot easier to let go of those other things that are causing stress and inflammation in your body and inflammation in your heart and inflammation in your mind, right? It's the constant chatter, the busyness and the clutter. It's a lot easier to kind of like give no Fs when we're at peace, right? And I'm not saying like not to give any Fs, but like care about what really matters. And at the end of the day, what actually matters is peace in your own heart. Because when you are at peace, everything else falls into place. I think Buddha might have said, we think it's the opposite. We think we'll be at peace when things fall into place.
Mm-hmm.
It's actually the opposite. Things fall into place when we are at peace.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Yeah. So many great takeaways there. I think I want to bounce back on a couple of things, but you said so many things too that there's a lot of directions we can go next. But let's just talk a little bit about, because this is a question that I had planned, and I think this will really apply to a lot of people. You use the phrase feeling graspy for clients versus serving clients.
Yeah.
And I think that that's an important evolution or mindset shift. And I think when we're starting any business, it's like the revenue, clients, we almost need it for our own confirmation that we're legitimizing ourselves, right? And so we feel this need, and sometimes we do things, when we were starting businesses or as we start new businesses, sometimes you can do things to that aren't effective, aren't efficient, aren't good long-term decisions, but whatever, you need to get clients, and there's a lot of value in that scrappiness, right? But then you talked about being able to evolve that and then having a staff of 4, and you don't really bring on staff usually unless there's some form of revenue, unless you're really investing heavily, which you have to continually, but there's usually some sort of balance and success that's happening as a function of that. So talk to us a little bit about that transition. How did you go from the feeling graspy, many people do, to okay, maybe I'm not as graspy anymore, and I've actually leveled past that?
Definitely, Craig. It's such a good question. And again, it's something that I'm personally constantly reevaluating, right? Mm-hmm. Every day waking up and feeling, okay, again, that same question, who am I being? And there's obviously logistics to living in a society and living where we have bills that we have to pay. So I think a good differentiation is be consistent and be dedicated to the process, which means show up every day, right? Falling into a place of trust is different than not showing up, right? You have to show up and you have to be consistent, but there has to be this underlying, it's like the river that flows through us. And it's like the blessings to all the used car salesmen out there in the world, but it's sort of that same, that mindset, right? It's like that feeling that you get when you walk onto a used car lot and they swarm you and you're like, oh God, back up, son, I'm just shopping. That's the graspy feeling that you don't want your clients to feel. And that can be really hard when you are struggling to pay the rent. So
all the more reason for a side hustle though, right? All the more reason to take a dual approach. If you're not all hardcore entrepreneur, is to have a safe footing. So you're not trying to sell or promote something so you can eat, right?
And I do think there is value behind, and this is also some personal work that I've done as well. There's the divine feminine and the divine masculine, right? And there has to be a balance between the two, because listen, if I never made the empowered invitation to work with me, I would never have new clients.
Right.
So for me, I know a lot of entrepreneurs out there say, well, I don't want to be salesy. I disagree with that. You don't want to be cringy. You don't want to be graspy, and you don't want to deter people from your approach. And the way to shift that is, again, tap into, why are you doing this in the first place?
Yeah.
And listen, that can sound fabulous to say, oh, well, I'm doing this to help people. And I want to make world peace. Yes, we all do. We all want to help people, but really, what's your why behind that why? And honestly, for me personally, I want to be able to treat my friends and family to dinners without them ever to have to look at a bill. I want to be able to hire other small entrepreneurs, small business entrepreneurs to help me with my social media marketing so they can pay their kids and they can, pay their rent.
Right.
I want to leave a footprint that will be for generations into my children and to give my children more than what I had growing up. So yes, of course, I want to be able to help people. But again, just like what you said, Craig, there's an element of feeling attached to the outcomes of our clients and feeling, again, graspy to feed our own ego. Oh, I need to prove that I'm doing this for some esoterical bigger purpose. No, man. Yes, that's part of it. But I want to be able to just live life without having to worry about how much that cheeseburger costs, or without having to choose, different things on a menu because of a $3 price difference. Like, fundamentally for me, that's been my personal journey. And this came from, when my parents got divorced, my mom had to file bankruptcy and we lost our home. We were essentially homeless. So, those scarcity mindsets, I've really had to do the personal work to not fall into that graspy feeling. And it's all about awareness. So that transition has taken years and time and therapy and practices that I have. And it's really all just about saying, okay, I'm feeling graspy right now. I'm feeling like I need a new client. Why is that? Because it's sure, there's probably a financial piece to it, but ultimately I know I can go teach yoga, or I can go get a bartending gig if I had to. There's lots of ways to make money in the world. Right. It's probably something else. And that is valuable information. And again, it's not that you're a bad person. It doesn't mean, it literally just means that there's something there to learn. So fundamentally, to shift, look in the mirror, try to dig a little deeper into why we might be feeling graspy or attached to gaining more fame and validation from the outside, and redirect it around to the inside and ask yourself, what need am I actually filling, and how else can I get that need filled so that I can fall back into this deep place of trusting the process and being of service to my clients.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, and so I think what happens for a lot of folks is they get into that game and then they start to feel that fear. And then they're like, well, I don't want to do that. So then they back off, right? Or they don't do it for long enough to develop the skill, right? And develop the types of relationships that can yield bigger, like long-term results that come with growing and scaling, like a big business versus like just being self-employed. So then I everything you've said has been like spot on, I think, in terms of like what we talk about. So then give us some specific strategies then that you use, like business strategies. So you go inward and you say, okay, well, why am I feeling this need? Like I just had my meditation mentor said, I talked about him, like sometimes I just have too strong of an ego and I want to tone it down. And so his question to me is like, well, why do you feel like you have this ego? Like what's propelling that, right? So exactly to your point. But then now, okay, you're through that. What are some things that you think people can deploy or do in their activities to then also scale to the next level?
Yeah, I think fundamentally, Craig, a belief that I have and I see over and over is that the way we do one thing is the way we do everything. So I just kind of wanted to add that to this question of the question that you just asked. And that's just to remember, like everything that we're talking about here in growing a business, we can also relate to our physical health, right? And you said something along the lines of not being dedicated to putting enough time in, right? And it's the same thing with health. We didn't get to where we are in our health overnight. So how can we expect ourselves to heal overnight? And again, tapping back into knowing our why. And this is where having support, fundamentally as an entrepreneur, you have to have support. So even if that means tapping into a community of, fresh out of school coaches and someone who's willing to coach you for free in exchange for them learning, you again, get creative, but you have to have somebody holding you to that highest vision of your goals and of yourself. So that way, whenever you fall off track, which will be daily, they can remind you, oh, but why is it important, again, to show up on social media? Why is it important to you, again, to sign a new client or to do this lead generating that you're trying to do? Why is it important? And always coming back to that like true north. And it can be really helpful just to literally put pen to paper and make your list of, this is what I want in my life. And it can be really helpful to have somebody else coach you through that, because we can only see what we can see. And someone else can open a menu of options for us and can see things from different perspectives than we can. So I think implementing that support is non-negotiable in that process. As far as like other tips, again, I would literally just take pen to paper and say, why is this important to me? And it's the same thing if you're on a health journey, if you're on a business journey, whatever, if you're on a spiritual journey, why is it important for me to navigate my way around the speed bumps on this path to where I'm going? Because we can't control the speed bumps. They're always going to be there. And people are going to throw hazard signs in there. Like there's going to be more crazy stuff thrown in our way, like a worldwide pandemic. How resilient are you to those crazy things that we can't control? And how can you bring it back to remembering what you can control? And I mean, as corny as it sounds, make a vision board, literally, to have that daily reminder. If vision boards aren't your thing, like write a reminder of yourself or make that picture of that future self that you want to be and start living that person right now. And it's as simple as, I want to be the person, again, who can just go to dinner with a big group of people and pick up the check without thinking. How can I be that person today? Well, I can maybe show a little kindness to somebody on the street, or maybe I can, maybe that can motivate me enough to show up for my, next 20-minute opening the relationship call with a stranger that I met on the internet that maybe I felt a little resistant to because I'm a little tired and I don't feel like doing it, right? You have to have that bigger picture, and you have to have somebody helping you to see it through, because doing it alone is not sustainable. It's not sustainable.
I'm a huge, huge, huge believer in more support is better than less support. Like in literally every area of my life.
Yes.
Having more support is critical. And I love that you talked about association and mentorship and accessing people who can really help you level up and keep you accountable. And at the end of the day, I think people need accountability more than they want it. And that doesn't mean you're less of an entrepreneur. I think the best entrepreneurs recognize that in themselves, and they say, hey, okay, what system can I develop or build? What village can I surround myself around to like hedge against that?
Yes.
That tendency we all have, right?
Yeah. And I think it's important to, as I'm sure you've done, you didn't mention this specifically, but also get the right support, because emotional support from your friend who's never built anything is great when you feel like having a pity party on Friday night and a glass of wine or beer, but that's not going to drive you on Monday morning. Like that's kind of the opposite of support, because they'll give you every excuse in the universe as they might not understand the game. And so it is so much about the support, but it's also about choosing the support wisely.
Yes, I'd love to add to that, if I may.
Yeah, please.
Like what you said, that's almost the opposite of support. And it's the same thing on a health journey. And it circles back around to letting go that which isn't serving us. And, staying in that low vibe pity party over a glass of wine with our best friend, like, is that ultimately adding to ease and flow and peace to your life? Or is it just perpetuating the story of our minds, the limiting beliefs that I'm not able to do this and I can't be responsible for all these things and I don't know my shit, like this isn't going to work, right? When we fall into those relationships, and this is the hardest part about self-development in any way, shape, or form, and entrepreneurship definitely, is having to eliminate certain people, because guess what? If you're on a healing journey and there are people in your life who are keeping you low vibe, having to learn how to say no to those people is the hardest yet the most rewarding work ever. And then filling that space with the people who are going to help you level up, right? You are an average of the five people around you. It's so true. And listen, that doesn't mean every childhood friendship you have to cut out. But what it means is maybe when you're with them, you don't talk business. You reserve that for the people who are going to support you. And I love Gabby Bernstein's work, and I love incorporating the woo-woo and the spirituality into what I do, because we are energetic and spiritual beings in our core. And she says, be discerning of who you share your new ideas with. And, there's a fine line, and only intuitively can and we know very deeply. It's like a very quick, oh yeah, this person will support me on this journey, or this person will not. Be discerning and be willing to not be vulnerable if that vulnerability is not going to be met with empathy. And I'll give credit to Brene Brown for that, right? We heal when vulnerability is met with empathy. But if I'm, at happy hour and I share that I'm trying to stop drinking, do you think that people around me are going to empathize with that? No, they're going to probably say, oh, forget it. Here's another drink. There's a level of discernment that you have to have as an entrepreneur. And again, it comes back to what's going to lead me to the most peace. And maybe that means keeping certain old relationships just at surface level and being okay with that.
Yeah, there's so much we can do. We talk about with quality time versus quantity of time. Yeah. Right. And it's like going to the family barbecue for 6 hours, or can you go for an hour and a half or 2 hours and have boundaries and then go kick butt running your company, or, go exercise or whatever else it is that, you can squeeze the most value. So a lot of value for like less time. There's still value in quantity of time as well, but
of course,
there's a way to discern the difference, I think.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think most of us are just so much like walking robots in the sense that like, this is what we've done. This is what our family does. This is what we've been conditioned. So we're just like going through life that way. And to both your point, it's like the pandemic has been like, whoa, check up.
Yeah. And I think it's almost less about entrepreneurship. It's adulting. Like that's a huge facet of becoming an adult and discerning what's yours and what was never really yours to begin with. So I think as an entrepreneur, it's taken to another level, but hopefully everybody's really engaging in that work.
And I think it's important to remember too, that again, this is not, the subconscious mind is a powerhouse. We're really freaking smart. Like human beings are really intelligent, and our critter brain is always going to fight to keep us safe, loved, and accepted. And that's it. If there's somewhere in life where one of those things feel threatened, we will self-sabotage in order to get safety, love, and acceptance. I think Tony Robbins says, we will override our morals in order to meet our needs, truly. And 3 basic needs are to feel safe, love, and accepted. And that's it. So to your point, learning what is ours and what wasn't ours to begin with, a lot of that comes from our family of origin. So it can be really helpful to work with somebody, through some of these limiting beliefs, whether it's around money or it's around the concept of I have to work really hard in order to be a success, or I have to work all these crazy hours in order to prove that I'm an entrepreneur. I mean, for me, that's been my personal journey. And at the end of the day, it's total BS. I work 4 hours a day and that's it. And in the summer, I only work 4 days a week and that's it. And I run a 6-figure business for the year. And I've had to grow to that. I mean, that didn't happen overnight, but it's because I'm constantly self-checking myself. And part of that journey is looking at one of the pivotal questions that I love that you can take away from this is, okay, if I have, for example, money mindset issues, right? Or if I believe that, I have to work really hard in order to make a lot of money, or I have to push myself to burnout in order to prove that I'm a successful entrepreneur. I would ask yourself, number one, where did that belief come from? Mm-hmm. Usually it's our family of origin. For me, it was my parents. What was the good value in them teaching us that? So the good value that I could take away from seeing my mom work 2 jobs was sometimes you just got to do what you got to do in order to feed your family and have a roof over your head. And, there's value to working hard and working consistently. But what of that value do I not agree with? And what I don't agree with is that that's the only way. And how can I reframe that belief of I have to work hard? How can I redefine that for myself for who I am evolving into as a person? And for me, what that means is working very specific, attuned hours for the day, for the week, and then unplugging and enjoying nature for the rest of the day. Because when I do that, I'm a better person, I'm a better CEO, I'm a better boss, I'm a better coach.
Yep.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that.
Not a lot of people, I think, have the courage or the willingness to do that, to step back and actually change and like unwrite the scripting that we've had, right? I mean, I've certainly fallen into that trap of just like entrepreneur, and it's like, boom, like everything is exciting, and you can fall into so many pitfalls if we're not careful and then forget things that are more important. So, I mean, one of the things we talk about in our theme is to just like stay focused on what and really who like matter most. And so, I mean, everything we've discussed today, I think is super in alignment with that. And we appreciate you being on and like sharing a lot of those things. You've gotten to dive into several different topics, and we could probably talk for hours, like literally, right? Because we've also got thoughts on top of everything you shared, and we could go deeper. But is there anything just like recent that's really been a revelation or a realization for you? I always like to ask people, because I feel like as an entrepreneur, if you're on the cutting edge, you're learning like freaking daily, if not hourly, if not by the minute.
Yeah.
Right. And so there's so many things that can come to my mind when I think of what did I learn today or yesterday. So like, is there anything that's been really hot for you in terms of like in your mindset or something you've upgraded or changed lately that you think would be helpful for folks?
One of the things, even just this morning, as I was on a group call with my coach and my network and my community, is that we don't need proof. We don't need evidence of our future self existing in order to be that person, right? So a lot of the paradigms I think that we get stuck in is, well, I can't call myself a full-time coach until I have a full-time roster of clients, or I can't, until I have proof or evidence of what I'm trying to do, I'm not allowed to be that person. And this is a fundamental shift. I mean, this is, again, it's the same question I always ask myself: what am I doing and who am I being whilst I am doing? Because who I'm being, the state of my central nervous system, whether I'm eating a meal and trying to digest it appropriately, or I'm having a meeting with my team, or I'm trying to learn something and stay focused with a client or my coach, if who I'm being is distracted and stressed out and the state of my nervous system is in fight or flight, fundamentally the doing is going to fall short over and over and over again. So anytime I have a moment where something isn't clicking or the systems that we have in place don't seem to be reaping results, it's not because the system has changed. It's because I've changed. It's because deep down at the core of what I actually want has shifted a little bit. So zooming out and acknowledging, oh, maybe I don't need to bring on 15 more clients in June, which means I can actually scale back a little bit. Whereas maybe I did want that in the past, but now I don't. So I don't need evidence of, I no longer need evidence, or I never needed evidence of whatever it is that I'm trying to go for in order to just be that person now. And it feels a bit woo-woo. And even as I'm saying it, it's like, well, how do you do that? And it's literally just about, okay, I am that person now. I am because I am because I am. Because I deserve to be, because it's my God-given right to be successful and to have money and to not fear not being able to pay the bills. It's my God-given right to experience peace and pleasure and joy in my life. So what can I do now to lead me to more of that without needing evidence of my goals, right? So it's kind of this like, and I'm going to say this, and a lot of people have a lot of different feelings about this phrase, and it's sort of that faking it till you make it. And I actually, a lot of people hate it because it implies that you're not being authentic. I completely disagree. And I always think of when I joined a yacht and I was like, listen, I've never worked on a yacht before, but I'm going to pretend that I know what the hell I'm doing. And because I'm savvy and hardworking and I have all this experience, I know that as long as I show up every day and fake it, which obviously I'm not faking anything, I'm doing it, but in my mind, I'm kind of faking it. Eventually, I won't be faking it anymore because now I'll have experience and longevity under my belt. If that's all you need in order to make it is experience and longevity, then just keep showing up. Just keep showing up. You don't need the evidence of the end result before you're able to show up. You are fully capable of showing up now as you are now.
Yeah, it's so powerful. And like you said, if you're faking it, you're really just, it's like a mental hack in a sense.
Yeah.
And fake it till you actually become it, which is your whole theme. So I think that's so powerful. Where can people find you? Yes. Where is the best way for people to connect with you, get more of your content?
Yes. Two main places. I am on Instagram daily at the Chelsea Haines. I show up on stories. I share free gut health content. You can learn. I mean, you could start your whole journey just by going through all of the free content that I've shared on Instagram and then also on LinkedIn, Chelsea Haines on LinkedIn. If you're looking to dive a little bit deeper into my work specifically and how to work with me, you can go to my website, chelseahainescoaching.com, which of course gives a full detail and run of how we can work together and why that might be relevant or important to you. You can book a 20-minute call with me right through the website. But Instagram and social media is a great place to connect with because I'm in the DMs all day, every day as well. So if you have questions, come on over.
Chelsea keeps it real on Instagram. She is so hilarious and so much real value. Literally this morning, I just saved your fiber post. So like I'm constantly saving Chelsea's work. It's super helpful and relevant for anyone who's got a gut and wants to thrive. So we really appreciate you being on. I know the listeners got a ton of really good thought process, and I hope everybody has a good day and enjoy the grind. Take care.
So much, guys. Appreciate it.
Thanks for listening to today's episode.
Please subscribe and leave a review, and be sure to visit tandemconsulting.co/talks.